I probably should not have started with that song. I'm already in tears. I'm like, oh my gosh. I had just heard that song, once before, and oh no, that's for this afternoon. Yeah, I don't need that. So much of what you guys just sang is so much of what I want to share this morning. And, and that last song, Be Still and Know, it was kind of a sense of exactly what happened to me, is that before I used to know God, and now I'm known by God. And that's been my journey over the last 15 years particularly. I feel like it's been a lifetime. However, particularly in the last 15 years when I was diagnosed with cancer. And it's taken me this long to process it all. It wasn't until just a few years ago we were living in Northern Virginia. My husband was military, so we moved around a lot. We lived in Guam, Philippines, Okinawa, San Diego, Monterey, Winter Harbor, and then we ended up in D.C. And but it's been a journey of looking for happiness, health, and home. I mean, I've always, I just haven't had a home. I've tried to make a home wherever I am. But so anyway, the last couple years, we had left Northern Virginia and realized that that was not where we wanted to live, but wasn't sure where we wanted to go. So I had this message of, get everything off your plate. I have plans for you. And I had no idea what that meant. And so I just kept honoring that. I completed some of my commitments at work and an organization, Landmark, that I was really involved with. And I even went into my school. I was working in a special ed department. And I told them, I said, this is going to be my last year. And they said, well, where are you going? I said, I don't know. Just not here. And so she said, okay. And so we got someone in and training. I worked in the special ed department. And then come that December, we were given a little book called Who Moved My Cheeks? Now, how many of you have ever heard of that book? It's a little book about change, about two little mice. It was a game changer, but I gave it to my husband because we were used to the military, to being told where and when to go. And so for us to choose where to go was monumental. However, I gave that book to my husband, and the next day we called the realtor. Now, we didn't know where we were going to go. And we had thought of Richmond, because three of my four children are still in that area, and I have a daughter in Texas. And so the house sold, still didn't know where we were going, and we decided to come out to Colorado because our oldest sister, now this is my family right here, both sisters and my niece. This is Judian's daughter. So when I say our, this is us. So our oldest sister was dying of cancer, and I really wanted to be with her. So we put everything in storage and lived in Kathy's basement and Mom's condo and thought we were going to live there. But while we were there, I was able to attend the Center for Contemplative Living, where Father Keating started about the spiritual journey. Now, I was introduced to centering prayer like in 2000, 2001, and had been doing centering prayer, but really didn't understand what was going on during that time until I took his courses. And then I was able to process what had happened to me the last 15 years of my life, because miracles happened. I mean, I have an extraordinary life, and you would not believe what I've been through the last 15 years. But it's, and so I finally had the tools to be able to put it together. And so this is a product of me being able to process the last 15 years in the context of centering prayer. Because within centering prayer, there's four aspects. Let me back up just a minute, because I want to read a quote from Martin Laird. Well, let me just say, this process, and the title of this talk is A Return to Love. And it's being happy, healthy, and home. And that's where I feel like I am right now, in a place that I am so aware of the magnificence of life and what a gift, life is. And So Martin Laird in the book Into the Silent Land says, we are built for contemplation. Communion with God in the silence of the heart is a God-given capacity like the rhododendron's capacity to flower, the fledglings for flight, and the child's for self-forgetful abandon and joy. And then Thomas Keating in one of his talks, Heartfulness, says, the classic meaning of contemplation out of Matthew 6:6, which Jesus calls the prayer in secret, is about a deepening relationship that involves an intention to converse with God, to open and consent to the presence of God. To converse with God presupposes a willingness to listen to God. Listening is an act of silence. You cannot hear what somebody else is saying if you're talking all the time. Prayer as relationship emerges as the essence of prayer, which can then be expressed in many different ways. So the process of centering prayer or meditation, whatever you do, some kind of contemplative prayer where you unattached from your thoughts. I didn't realize how negative thoughts can be. I mean, it's kind of like right there, judging, criticizing, analyzing. And so when you can just let those go, because they're going to come, you can't stop them, but you don't just hang on to them. So the practice of centering prayer is just letting those thoughts go by. So little by little, this is Father Keating continues, little by little we enter into prayer without any other intention except to consent. Consent becomes surrender, and surrender becomes total receptivity as this process evolves, and total receptivity is effortless. And that's what I realized happened when I was going through cancer. So in 2003, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. It's a cousin to leukemia and lymphoma. It's in the bone marrow, it's in the plasma cell, but it affects bone. So 85% of my bones were cancerous, and I had about 1.5 years to live. They gave me about 1.5 to 3 years to live. And I'm like, no, hell no. I was not ready to die, and I was, when you're confronted with a life-threatening disease, you're at a point where you're at a crossroads in your life, and it really is an opportunity to choose. And that was the consent. Yes, I am a yes for life. And I was committed to find out, do whatever I could to get well. Because I was married, I had 4 kids, I had 8 grandkids, maybe not quite 8 at that time, maybe 6 at that time. I have 8 now, but I wanted to see my grandkids. So anyway, so as I go through this, I realized that there was those elements of consenting, surrender, receptivity, and it was effortless. So after being diagnosed, it was December of 2003, and it had affected my hip. It hurt to walk, and so I had gone to a silent retreat, and I tried other things. I hadn't really gone to the doctor yet. I tried massage therapy. I tried acupuncture and chiropractor. And I had gone to a silent retreat. So I had been practicing centering prayer for about 1.5 years. And we went to a silent retreat in Gethsemane, where Thomas Merton had lived. And in that silence, I could finally listen to my body. And it hurt so bad. I ached all over. And I was also able to finally be with myself. Because I don't know if you've ever been on a silent retreat. You got to be with yourself. And the first 3 days, I thought we were going to climb out of our skin. There was no music. We couldn't listen to music. We couldn't read other books. It was like being in the silence. But after the first 3 days, you finally get that you're loved. There's nowhere to get. God loves you. It's not about performance. It's about presence. So I was finally able to just be with myself, and which was such a godsend, because for the next couple months, I was going to have to be a lot by myself. So I came back from that retreat, and then that was when I was diagnosed. And that was December of 2003. So I had a hip replacement in 2004. And then during radiation, my oncologist called me and said that they're doing a clinical study at the National Institute of Health with a stem cell transplant, and I should go check it out. So my husband and I went, and it involved immunotherapy, where they created a vaccine from my plasma to give to the donor. Now, I had to have a donor. That was another part of the protocol. So my cancer had to be bad enough to create a vaccine. I had to have a donor, and I had to have responded to treatment, which they had given me steroids, and it knocked my counts down pretty well. So I got enrolled. So they sent kits off to my siblings, 4 of them. 2 of them were matches. My oldest and my youngest were matches. And so we accepted that to get into the protocol. So they brought me in, and they took my plasma, sent it off to get a vaccine created, and then they brought these 2 out, my oldest and youngest, to do a series of tests. So for a week they went through tests. Both of them were perfect matches. My oldest sister volunteered, said, "I'll do it." And they said, "No, we're going to let the younger one do it." So Judy won, so she was my donor. So they flew her out and started, once the vaccine, was created, they started giving her injections of this vaccine while I started chemo. And I did 5 rounds of chemo, and it was like 72-hour infusions. I carried a fanny pack of chemo in a fanny pack for 72 hours, hooked up to a Hickman 5 times. And then finally it was, I was ready to receive the stem cells. So they brought her in that weekend. They had given her last injection. They started giving her a drug where she had to inject herself in the stomach to stimulate the stem cells out of the bone marrow into the blood so they could take it through an apheresis machine. So that last visit, they hooked her up to this apheresis machine for 11 hours, 6 hours one day and 5 hours the next. And they sent it through a centrifuge machine, took out the white blood cells, the stem cells, and then put back what they didn't need. And then finally, on September 13th, I went into the hospital and gave me a full round of chemo. The same chemo, one of them was 8 times stronger than the other one was 25 times more stronger. So they're totally depleting my body as far down as they could. And then the following week, they gave me the stem cells. And, they were little bags. It was pretty anticlimactic. I mean, all this, action and, you're involved with a lot, and then there's just the waiting and the waiting and the waiting. So the one day they came in and gave me the stem cells. They're little bags. They did 9 bags throughout the day of just giving me the stem cells. And then it was waiting again to just watch. So over the next 100 days, though, so to get a stem cell transplant, it's like getting a new hard drive. It's the root of the blood, because the stem cells are root of the blood, just like getting a new hard drive. So I have her DNA, and I changed blood types. Way to go, Jude. I know. It was just miraculous. It was just amazing. And, we had more fun. I mean, they paid for her to fly out for Virginia, so we made a vacation of it. We went to little retreats, when she would come. We would try to take a day or 2. And we were just a force to be reckoned with. I mean, who has fun going through cancer? But it was one of the things that was given to me, as a tool to create a context that empowers you. And I know that that first month I was diagnosed, everybody, you're thinking of cancer as battling cancer, or you read about they lost their fight to cancer. And we were watching one of those movies, Lord of the Rings, and, all these wars and battles, and I'm like, that is not me. That doesn't resonate. And I said, what could I do if I'm not battling cancer? I couldn't cut it out. I mean, it's in my blood and my bones. It's not like I had a tumor that I could get rid of. So I had to embrace it. I had to accept it. I had to love it. I had to welcome it. So I created the context of creating with cancer. And I wanted to create a new life. And they said, you may not cure the disease, but you could heal your life. And so that's what I've taken on for the last several years. And in centering prayer and being silent, where it led me to is my heart. You know, where is my heart killing off people? Where am I judging and analyzing and being critical, not only of myself, for others? So I practiced, forgiving and just allowing not only myself but others. And I'm not perfect. It's a practice. So we haven't ever quite arrived. But it made a huge difference in my love for myself and my kids and my family and my husband. So so I don't know where I am in these notes, but I'm sure I'll get covered what gets covered, right? We'll let the Spirit move me. But it was such an amazing process. So over the 100 days, so the next 3 months, it was just watching. And so they would send my blood off to forensics to determine how much of me was me and how much of me was Judean. And over 100 days, it switched. And so at 100 days, I had Judean's DNA. And I had changed blood types.
So you're the virtual twin?
Well, yeah. So I could go, commit a crime and blame her. Yeah. Yeah. And so, and it's been amazing. And, it's not like that was the end. I still, I had graft versus host, where then my body they were fighting, it was attacking. So, they got that under control. Later on, I had to go on some more steroids, and I had cataracts, so I had cataract surgery in both eyes. I've had vertebroplasty, where my lower back has been crushed, and I've had a compression fracture. And then my hip, I've had 5 surgeries on my hip. So, but, it's just been part of the process, and it's been, actually easy, as when you have these tools. And part of the tools is just being able to let things flow through me, which is part of the surrendering, letting go of control, because part of the saying yes is that I had to trust the medical field. I mean, I couldn't do this. So I totally surrendered my body over to the medical field. And then I just focused on, the healing of my spirit and the healing of my emotions and in my relationships. And forgiveness was a big thing. Letting go, being willing to let go of the pain. And I realized in another centering prayer, we also did a 10-day silent retreat up here at Snowmass. And that one, I realized how much I had been hanging on to past pain, a lot of resentments. And, that's the healing. It's just being able to let go of all that pain and realizing that I'd rather be related than right. And, I was being righteous about my pain. And someone had told me, a priest friend of mine said, that is your idol. You're idolizing your pain. You'd rather be in pain than free. So choose. Choose your pain or choose freedom. And I chose freedom. And I had to let go of being right. I love being right. How many of you love being right? We all love being right. Yeah. And we wonder why we are not related. It's like, okay. So another thing that was given to me was the whole thing of asking for a miracle. Because when I was first diagnosed, I really realized it was going to take a miracle. And my initial first thought was, well, I don't deserve a miracle. Miracles for others. How can I claim one for myself? And then in that same thought, I thought, that's ridiculous. Becky, it's yours. Claim it. And so I did, and I lived like I was well, and I had a disease to manage. Because I wasn't well, I wasn't going to be well sometime in the future. I was owning it now. And so I think that's why they were so amazed at my results at NIH, because it never occurred that I was sick. And they even had, when I was in the hospital, the head doctor of the pain and palliative care came in and asked, he goes, what are you doing that's working? Your attitude is amazing, your results. He said, could I bring in some interns to interview you? These were some of the military guys, and they said, maybe you could give them some advice. And the two things that came to my mind is my faith and my attitude. And I told him that thing about believing in a miracle. I said, you got to believe that it's done. It's not like wondering, it's not like you plant a seed and you wonder if it's growing, you keep digging it up. You just know it's going to grow. You just know, you trust that it's going to work. And then with the attitude, I said, it's the practice of centering prayer. It's the practice of letting go of all those thoughts, because you don't know how many what ifs come to your mind when you're dealing with something like this. So someone gave me the advice of stick with the what's so and what's next, and stay away from the what ifs. And that was a mantra that I gave myself all along. So I started keeping track of all the miracles, and so I sent out an email weekly, and it was an opportunity, kind of a platform. This was before we got into Facebook and blogging and all that. So I just started an email, and I called it the Miracle Meter. And it created such a context for things to show up, and I was able to, really make a difference for other people that were going through the same thing. And I was also able to share my frustrations. I remember a time I was during the radiation, and I was just so depressed because, not only does it take your appetite away, it takes your appetite for life away. So you find yourself getting really depressed. And so I was sitting on the table with the radiologist, and she said, have you ever been pregnant? And I go, yeah, 4 times. She goes, is it always, pleasant? And I go, no. She goes, but you're willing to be with that, right? And I go, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I got it. I got it. And, it's that whole thing of, I was literally giving birth to new life. It was such a visual for me of what we do in the spiritual life of dying to self, dying to the ego, dying to selfishness and self-centeredness, and giving room, allowing something else to arise. And it was such an amazing visual. I actually have a poem that my sister wrote that I want to share. That was so amazing. But I reread this.
You're out of time.
Okay. Oh, no. Wrong. Yeah. But I reread this, and inside the context of the spiritual life, it just had a whole new meaning. And, okay, I'm probably going to cry, so let me. So it's called Liquid Life. Liquid life, going from me to you. The very essence of our Creator, administered with powerful love and energy from thousands of souls all over the world. No questions of why it is happening. It was decided long ago in another time, another place. Decided between 2 kindred souls who agreed to share love and life. One who asked, if I become unconscious, will you be there to wake me up? Will you be there to help me start over, to do it again? Will you give me a second chance? A chance to love freely without fear? A chance to play again like a child? A chance to not be serious about life? A chance to really shine and not hide in another's shadow? A chance to give the world the gift I was supposed to give them? A chance to experience the peace that passes all understanding? A chance to see the unfolding of an early blossom, touch the soft skin of my sweet children, open up to the passion of my body. A chance to be fully present in all of life, not wishing I was somewhere else, worrying if I'm doing the right thing, and wondering if there is something more magnificent somewhere else. Just being alive and only taking in one moment at a time. Of course I'll be there. I will be there to gently kiss you awake with my rich red blood. I will be there to love you as you loved me in an earlier time. A time when your unconditional love healed me from the inside out. I too will step out of the shadows and play like a child, love without fear, and only live one moment at a time. No more wondering if I'm doing the right thing, only a remembrance of my true nature, my whole, complete, and perfect self. Thank you for asking me to accompany you on your journey. Thank you for allowing me to cradle you as you gently wake up. No. I've always wanted to acknowledge, the support and the love that I got during this process. And it's been truly a miracle. It really is. And, if I can even read this, I don't think I could read this last quote. It's like, contemplative prayer is the world in which God can do anything. To move in that realm is the greatest adventure. It is to be open to the infinite and hence to infinite possibilities. Our private, self-made worlds come to an end. A new world appears within and around us, and the impossible becomes an everyday experience. So thank you for letting me share. Thank you, guys. You're welcome.